He's Jim Stewart, I'm Rick Collins, and this is Off the Bench. Today we're going to be talking with Matt Wixon about FISD football and the weekend that just happened. It's playoff time for 13-5A, and we're going to find out who the Division I and Division II playoff teams are going to be from 13-5A, or as we like to call it, District Frisco. Stars lose on the road again. MLB postseason awards, it's that time of year we find out who's going to be our Cy Young, our Manager of the Year, and our MVPs. It's also Monday Night Football review today as we had a huge Panthers win last night against the Dolphins. NFL owners in chaos, but we start off with good news, Jim.
What's that?
LiAngelo Ball and the other two UCLA freshman basketball players will be returning to the United States today.
I bet you the whole thing was over that the president of China wanted a pair of Big Baller brand.
That's what he wanted?
That's what
he was like, I'm not paying $500.
You are going to give me those.
As by Eastern European accent of a Chinese emperor.
The problem is that I think this shows that people can get away with anything these days. They needed more than a slap on the wrist, and that's what they got. The problem with a lot of people now in today's world is that we don't have consequences anymore. You can do anything. From anywhere from being in government all the way down to, from government all the way down to kids. There's no consequences anymore.
Yeah.
And that is going to have an adverse effect on
those three kids going forward, on UCLA basketball going forward, on college basketball players, period. Because these kids, they go over there, they think, okay, hey, they got away with it, so I can get away with it.
Let's also be honest. Nike brought those teams over, sponsored those teams to go play in China. You know, all those teams are like, well, if our kids are going to get arrested for doing something stupid, we just won't send our teams over anymore.
Yeah.
We won't come when we're invited. So we really need to understand the ramifications of this. I mean, yes, there were slaps on the wrist, but there was a lot of stuff going behind the scenes. Trump was over there. He probably had something to do with the release. Nike probably told China, hey, if you do this, we're going to back out a lot of what we do.
The colleges,
probably not the but
let's slow the roll on that, huh?
Basketball is probably the second biggest market in China when it comes to sports, outside of maybe baseball and soccer. But bringing that across, that Chinese market needs the American influence when it comes to basketball to really keep thriving. And that's why you see more and more professional teams, professional players, youth players that maybe want to forego college and college teams going over there playing to expose them to the way we play basketball.
We saw that Jimmer Fredette and Stephon Marbury getting in a fight the other day. You know, there are more and more basketball players, whether they're at their end of the career like Fredette and Starbury, or the beginning of their career. Kobe went over and played in Italy, but there are players that have gone over to China and Southeast Asia to play basketball, especially guys who have just graduated from high school who want a job. They don't want to go to college for a year and waste a year of basketball playing, not making money. So they go over to Europe if they're really good. But you can go over to China, make good money, and play in a decent league. It's not that bad.
All right, let's be honest. They don't just make good money; they make great money. They probably make $150,000 to $250,000. That's more than probably 90% of the American people do, and probably 98% of the people in the world do. So we've got to come to grips with what little money is relative to sports, right? And
they know that they're going to get. Because now with the internet and YouTube and everything, you can go and find highlights from kids playing over in China or in Turkey or in Europe, the rest of Europe.
That's why these European kids are getting high draft status.
Yes, and there's more willingness to take a chance on these kids overseas. So if you're a high school player here and you say, no, I've got to get a job, my family needs the money, I'm going to go overseas. I have a chance to do that and make money, be able to send money back to my family, and I'm going to get just as much recognition by the NBA when the draft rolls around as a college basketball player, which used to be that was not the case because nobody ever got to see any of these kids overseas. They didn't play in these big camps. They didn't play in Eurobasket League. So there's more opportunity to go overseas, make money. China is becoming a popular place for them to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about the 5-ton elephant in the room. That's a big elephant. Is the fact that are the balls going to get ramifications for this when it comes to UCLA? I mean, if I was UCLA, I'd cut them all.
No, they won't, and it's because UCLA wants to have their name in the spotlight the way they've had it for the last couple of years with LiAngelo Ball, right? Getting, he was a top draft pick. Okay, now with LiAngelo Ball there and LiAngelo Ball potentially going there, even if the news is bad, even if the news is he can't go there because the NCAA won't let him go there because of him making money off his own sneaker, UCLA can claim innocence over that. It's not their decision that he can't play there. It's an NCAA decision he can't play there. But their name being in the spotlight brings more attention to the school, more attention to the basketball program, which has struggled the last 10, 15 years. This is not a basketball program that's been amazing for 10 or 15 years. Russell Westbrook was the last player that came out that was good.
Well, and
that team wasn't good.
And their whole athletic department as a whole has struggled.
Yes.
Their football team
hasn't been great.
The basketball team hasn't been great.
And it's a program historically that's been really good.
The only program that I can think of that really UCLA has been doing really good at is college rugby. They've been really good at college rugby. The problem is that extent of success has not expanded into the other two. And maybe you are right. Maybe you have a point in the sense that UCLA goes, well, bad press is still press. And it makes us look like we're forgiving if we don't punish him.
Absolutely.
But it also says another thing to everybody when it comes to the players coming in the future is that you can get away with anything. Yeah,
I think that is a problem, but I don't think that's a UCLA problem, right? That's a college problem, and they've had that problem for years now. The internet and especially social media has created a major issue there. But let's get to the NFL owners infighting because we need to get to that next. Huge issue. Jerry Jones is threatening to sue the NFL, which means the other owners, basically, along with Goodell. He doesn't want Goodell's contract to be renegotiated right now. He doesn't want Goodell to get that access to that private plane until he dies.
I personally believe that there is need for an exorcism within the NFL because of what's happening now. We'll talk about it next.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacy Furniture Anniversary Sale.
Save today on Stacy's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Cheryl, all on sale today.
It's Stacy's Anniversary Sale, only happens once a year.
Shop Stacy's today or visit us online at stacyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacy's, you're shopping with family.
So as we were saying before the break, I believe the NFL needs an exorcism, and that's because it seems the craziness of Al Davis has seemed to have left Oakland in some sort of phantasm and has moved now to Dallas because Jerry has lost his mind in the last couple of years.
We all knew that this was he was capable of this. We just didn't see that he would ever do this because he's making so much money with the NFL. Why would he fight back against it? But I mean, he's ticked. This has become personal, in my opinion.
Yes.
This is not about business. This is about him not getting his way.
Yeah. The NFL compensation committee has given a cease and desist to Jones, who was basically an invite onto the committee because of his influence. They've now cut him from the committee. Arthur Blank is the chairman of that committee, and what he has said is that negotiations are proceeding. And you're right. This is making Jerry Jones look childish, extremist, and every other kind of ists you can talk about when it comes to, the hypocrisy of what's going on. He was backing Roger Goodell 100-fold when it came to Tom Brady. But now that it's Zeke Elliott, now it's his star that's in trouble. man, his thoughts had turned around, and he makes Robert Kraft look like a saint the way Robert Kraft dealt with it.
Well, I think
Robert Kraft was like, you know what? I'm not gonna make this public.
Yeah.
We'll deal with it behind the scenes, and then eventually, when he found out, Robert Kraft goes, you know what? I will honor the committee's
To me, one of the funny things though about this is that Jerry Jones was supportive of what they have been negotiating for Roger Goodell before, I would say, midsummer, right? Now, as we get into late fall,
he empowered the committee.
Winter, yes.
That was the crazy part. He empowered the committee to have ultimate decision over Roger Goodell's contract.
Yes, and now he's coming back on that, the hypocrisy of it, but it now has put in the limelight, in the spotlight, what Roger Goodell's negotiation looks like in terms of his contract. And if you're just the average person looking at this as an NFL fan, you think, man, this is insane. This guy is making what? And he's going to get access to what?
Yeah.
Until when?
But let's break down what it really means for each individual owner, because the NFL as a whole is not handing him a solid check of $50 million if he gets that $50 million. That $50 million is broken down into 32 pieces that each owner hands to Goodell as a package, right? And that means that it equals out to $1.56 million that each team has to pay Goodell for his services. And let's be honest, there are a ton of players that make a lot more than that per team. But we also have to look at what Roger Goodell has done for the league. Now, you can't blame him for the CBA negotiations. You can't blame him for what the players have demanded and what rules have been changed, because those are from the CBA and the owners meetings are what dictate what rules are in there. He can only lead. He's the CEO.
Yeah.
Those guys are the board of directors. They can vote how they want. He tries to lead them as best he can. So what has happened is, if you look over his 15 years or so term of being the commissioner, he's doubled the revenue of the NFL. It's gone from $7 billion to about $14 billion in revenue every year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that deserves, because his last agreement he was making $25-30 million. I think that deserves the $50 million. Healthcare, that's no problem for them. They probably have their own healthcare company. That shouldn't be an issue. And so what? He gets a private plane that he uses. It's the NFL's plane, and it's what? Every time they want to go on a flight, it's $2 or $3 grand? No big deal.
But he gets it until the day that he dies, not the day that he leaves as commissioner. So, to me, that's a little bit over the top. But
if you had a CEO that doubled the revenue of your company and it was a big company, would you?
I'm not just handing him keys to the plane for the rest of his life, though. I think, a
$5 or $6 million plane.
This is kind of the idea is that you want him to be committed to improving his lot as he's commissioner, not,
But most commissioners go about 20 years, 25 years. He's at the end of his lot.
Yeah, and I wonder if they just do not have a better option, and that's part of the problem, is there just isn't a better option. People have started talking about what would the other options be. There aren't any good ones. Nobody that stands out anyway. Goodell has done a good job in terms of
being a CEO.
Being the CEO of this company. But I think they really do need to start looking out for other options, because I think long term this is not the way the NFL wants to go. I think there's the money is not going to end up being the problem. I think it's going to be more of the managing the product, and I think the product is going to end up failing them at this rate.
Yeah, because hating Goodell is not going to affect the league one way or another, because he's going to be replaced at some point. What has happened now over the last year is now the shield has a crack in it.
Yeah.
The brand, the shield now has a crack, because what has happened, what has made the NFL such a strong brand when it comes to ownership, is that they were always united as one, at least publicly.
Right.
They were always united. Now there's infighting, and it's in the media,
and it's everywhere. It's between all levels of the NFL. It's not just the players versus the owners.
And you used to just see it in the
owners
NBA.
Versus owners versus commissioner. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and the problem is if you do not have a unified, at least appearance of a unified group, then what happens is people go, I can take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. I can go in and I can use one owner against another. I can use this to my advantage, whether it's a next CBA negotiation or someone who maybe wants to do advertising. Because what they'll do is they go, well, Jerry doesn't like them right now. So what I'll do is I'll go present this to the league, and then I'll go to Jerry and go, Jerry, this needs to happen this way because they are not going to agree to this. Yeah. So they're going to be able to do back-end negotiations with, and it's going to turn out like Congress after a while. It's going to be useless. They're all going to be against
it. It feels like Congress right now.
Yes. So what happens is, and this is really interesting, I've never seen this with the NFL in my life, is that you have great weekends and then chaos during the week.
Yeah,
and then
insanity.
Games on the weekends, chaos during the week. Whether it's Zeke Elliott or it's owners or whatever, the news is nonstop.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and that's great for us. But it does get old after a while.
Yeah,
it
does. We're halfway through the season. I'm almost just too tired to talk about the NFL anymore off the field. And next, we got to talk about the game on the field last night. Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton.
Boom.
Big win for them. They had to keep pace with the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about that and more next.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Monday Night Football review. Last night's game, Carolina Panthers, as I expected, did blow out the Dolphins, but it was way more than a blowout than I actually expected. And the 21 points are, they were garbage points for the Dolphins. Really, this game was over before halftime. It was over before it started.
Felt like college.
It did feel it felt like Alabama playing an early game against some lower-ranked Division I team.
Louisiana Lafayette.
Man, Miami is bad right now. We looked at the stats, yesterday before the game. We said this team is just not going to be able to win games.
They've gotten rid of all their weapons. Their defense is a mess.
They have the worst offensive efficiency in the NFL. There's no way that team can continue to win games.
And you know what? I would be really excited for the Panthers if it wasn't for the fact that Cam Newton, I can't rely on him to do anything consistently.
So you would not draft him as your fantasy quarterback?
No.
But then a week
let me put
him on the bench.
Yes,
you pull him
I would have him as a backup.
Yeah. Because a game like this, you could very much use.
Yeah, he's going to have a big game against really cruddy teams.
Yeah, and he had
bottom of the barrel.
Game last night.
He's going to have a lot of rushing yards. He's going to have a few probably rushing touchdowns. He's going to throw the ball down the field. But then it's also Cam Newton is a trap player.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a lock, and then he throws 4 picks, and you're just like, what happened?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he starts making fun of people.
Last night was one of his best games, 254 yards on 35 attempts, 4 passing touchdowns, 2 of which went to McCaffrey. McCaffrey had a huge game. 1 passing touchdown, 1 rushing touchdown for McCaffrey, 2 passing touchdowns to Funchess. Funchess had a huge game. But it was really the fact that per attempt and per catch
were crazy.
Huge yardage.
8.2 yards per rush.
194 yards running. He had 95 of those. 69, I think, on 1 play. It was a huge play. Miami's defense is terrible.
Which is surprising.
I looked up and I thought he ran past their linebacker, who I think.
Didn't they bring Darius in?
Yes.
Darius and Ndamukong Suh. Who would have thought in their wildest dream you'd be able to run on that?
Well, Carolina did a great job of running outside the tackles.
Okay.
That's where they made most of their yards. And that run by Cam Newton was outside the tackle. He made the linebacker miss, and I thought, okay, where's the backside linebacker and where are the 2 safeties? They never showed up. He ran past everybody.
What, they were playing on 9?
I don't know where
9
they
versus
were.
11?
I don't know. It looked like it because both the safeties never made a play. They were never on the screen the entire time. I just kept waiting for them to show up and make a hit on him. Nobody wants to tackle him. And once he gets up ahead of steam, man, I mean, I thought he was running for a touchdown.
What happened was early on in the game, the Panthers broke the Dolphins' back. That's what happened. They got behind early, and they all know, the Dolphins know they don't have the offense to catch up.
All their heads were down after the first quarter. They just looked like a team that was already beaten before the ball was snapped.
So this is probably a topic for another day, but I'm getting nervous. If half the games in the NFL are not worth watching, that's a brand problem.
They have a huge brand problem, and the Dolphins are a team that are slipping now. They started off well, but you knew with Ryan Tannehill out that one wasn't going to last. But you thought, look, this defense is good enough to keep them in a few games. They're not.
It also shows Tannehill wasn't as bad as everybody thought he was.
Yeah, and Tannehill, I think, is considerably better than old Jay Cutler and Matt Moore.
Well, maybe Jay Cutler can get right next to Tony Romo in the booth. That would be fun.
The sad part is that Jay Cutler hasn't been that bad, but he would be good on a team that already has a dynamic offense. The problem is they need him to make big plays. He's not a quarterback that's going to make big plays anymore.
He never was. He was someone who would matriculate the ball down the field, and then when that big play presented itself, whether it be a blown coverage or someone getting open in the backfield, not the backfield, but deep down, that's when his big playability came in.
I think, if he was on a Kansas City Chiefs or a Pittsburgh Steelers or something like that,
when he was with the Bears, his best years is when he had Forte, where they had to put 8 in the box, which means he had one-on-one matchups all day down the field, and he had an option out from the back, so his big arm.
Well, he had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, too, so he had great big receivers that he could just throw the ball up to that would make plays. He's not a quarterback who's going to go in and make decent receivers look great, and he needs a running game. And right now, the Miami Dolphins do not have a running game. They
got rid of Ajayi.
Got rid of Ajayi. I still don't understand that one. I mean, what a steal by the Eagles. Because, wow, that team is poised to win a Super Bowl
At this point
year.
Right now, I don't see a team who can compete with them.
No.
And that's the scary part.
I'm not going to bet against the Patriots, but I could definitely see a Patriots-Eagles.
If the Eagles continue playing the way they do right now, I'll bet against the Patriots.
Ooh.
I'll bet it. I'll put.
All right, Patriots, Eagles. If they're in the Super Bowl, I will bet on the Patriots. You'll bet on the Eagles.
Yes.
Okay. Right there, live on the show. We're gambling. No money. We're just gambling for fun.
So let's break down the Dolphins again. I don't think they're 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 players away from being a good team.
No,
anymore.
they're a long way away.
So where would we start?
They've got to start trading. Now,
where would you start on this team? Would you start offensive line? Would you start wide receivers? Would you start running back? Where would you start rebuilding this
I think they got to rebuild inside out. And I think, Ndamukong Suh is a very good player, but I think his value to somebody else might be better than what his value is to them long term. I think they need to start.
Not a focal point anymore.
Right. I think they need to start offensive and defensive line and build out from there.
Imagine sending him to Houston.
See, a team like Houston who's really desperate, but the problem is
I don't mean that when Watt comes back, and then it's Watt and Ndamukong Suh and then Clowney,
Whitney and Clowney. Yeah, that's a dominant defensive line. But a team like that,
what could they get? What could they get for Suh?
Well, let's say Watson was still healthy. I think they could definitely get a 3rd or 4th round pick from the Houston Texans for him, especially because of the injuries that they've had on their defensive line. They would be desperate. But the problem is now that Watson's down, Houston is not. No, Watson is down.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Houston is not going to the playoffs. I'm saying, let's say they just had those defensive line injuries, but still have their quarterback.
Yes.
Right? They have a dynamic offense, but the defense is terrible because it can't stop anybody. Well, you get Ndamukong Suh in that defensive line. Now you can start slowing down offenses.
You're still not going to win anything. But you have building blocks for next year. You have a better chance,
and you've got a building block for next year. But you have a better chance of getting in the playoffs and making noise. Now that Watson's out, they don't have that chance anymore. So there's no reason to trade for that guy, right? They're going to get everybody back next year. They'll reset next year and try again. But let's say
that's saying a lot to have
let's
two
say
guys
the Patriots
wanted
Sue. Now, there's a great option because they are terrible against the run. That would be great for them to bring him in, slow the run down, and give them
and they've got
more time
tools to be able to trade with.
Yes.
And Bill Belichick is not a hoarder of draft picks.
No, and he'd
rather bring in veteran talent than
brought
bring
in Vince Wilfork. He brings in these defensive linemen who other teams have either off the field issues or their age or whatever. Ndamukong Suh fits that mold.
And it's because they have such a structured administration. They have such a structured coaching staff, their team structure, the way they are built as a unit, as a team, makes it so that these troubled childs can come in and get enveloped with a whole bunch of maturity.
And the Dolphins desperately need draft picks. They just need, the next 3 years, they need to double the draft picks that they currently have.
Like I was listening, and they had Greg Jennings in on the Herd the other day.
Yeah, former Packer, former Minnesota Vikings,
and
Greg
former
Jennings.
Dolphin.
Former Dolphin, that's right.
And he said, and it's been a while, but he said that Miami locker room has a tendency over the years to be one of the most immature locker rooms.
Well, you're living in Miami. I mean, there's a reason those guys go down there. I mean, they're partying. They got, they're out on their boats.
Banana boats.
They're going out to the clubs at nights. It's like Las Vegas, right? I mean, it's an opportunity to get in trouble, and it doesn't surprise me that there's immaturity in that locker room. But this Dolphins team's in trouble, and this Panthers team, I think this was a great matchup for them this week because this was an opportunity for them to get back on track, especially after what happened last week and the way that Cam Newton treated the media last week. This was what he needed. He needed this win this week. He needed a big stat game so that he doesn't have to come out to the media and answer tough questions. I think the tough questions still should be asked of him, but they won't be. He can move on. They're a team that's going to make the playoffs now.
I think the biggest winner of this entire game is the 72 Dolphins. Because they look more and more like this team will never, ever, 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 ever repeat what they did. And they will maybe never, ever, little nevers, go back to the Super Bowl and win because I don't see it in the near future. I don't see it in the next 10, 15 years. They'd have to nuke this team and then build it from the raise from the ashes and start building all over again.
But the one thing we can say is that at least the Dolphins aren't the Browns. Next, we talk about the MLB postseason awards, and then we'll get into Frisco ISD football. And we have also a Stars update. We haven't talked a lot about Stars. Road woes have come upon the Stars recently,
There's a reason why we haven't been talking about them.
And I think we need to talk about it next.
Browns.
So the Stars, they started off the season well. They won a lot of home games. Unfortunately, that first loss against Las Vegas Knights. Now the Las Vegas Knights have looked really good, so doesn't look like a bad thing as far as the season goes. But 6-2 at home, but on the road 3-6. That's not going to do it.
Yeah, and at 9-8, they're one game over 500. They've scored 18 points this year, and that's good enough to maybe keep the playoff hopes alive. But this team really needs to come together. Ben Bishop has done a good job in goal. Not great, but what can you expect when he has almost free shots on him all night long? There's only so much a goalie can do before he starts looking like Goldberg from Mighty Ducks. I mean, where he just lets puck after puck in because he feels he has no support. And I don't know. I don't get too up or down about the Stars because the last couple of years they've been, they're awesome, and then they just collapse at the end. Yeah. Oh my gosh, and then they collapse. They're like the Mavs.
Yeah.
The Mavs and the Stars are sort of like joined at the hip when it comes to They get our hopes up so high.
For the Mavs last couple of years, last year and this year, we know.
But it used to be, this man here during the NBA World Series, NBA
very
Finals.
Very emotional about Mavericks in the last 2 years.
During the NBA Finals, first play of the game, or first 5 minutes, what was it? Wade had a easy layup, and you're just like, they're done. They're done. And that's the problem with these teams in Dallas, even with the Cowboys.
Well, we talked about FC Dallas starting off hot, and they're the best team in MLS, and we go, man, this team is just going to destroy everybody. And then they don't even make the playoffs. This Stars team has started off well enough to progress for the rest of the season towards the playoffs, but the problem that they have right now is that they're trying to learn a new system under Hitchcock, which we talked about before. But how long does it take to learn this new system? They've got to learn it at some point. The Hurricanes were not a great team going into that game against the Stars, but they were at home. And the Stars have been terrible on the road. And I don't know what is going on. How do you win 5-0 at home against the Islanders and then go on the road to Carolina and lose 5-1? I mean, I don't get it.
Ken Hitchcock is really not wanting this team to put it behind them.
No.
He wants them to remember this. He wants them to really think about the problems they've run into and try to start building as a team, because a lot of people and a lot of sports go, hey, just put it behind you. We are who we are.
Forget about it. Next
problem
game.
is we are who we are doesn't work when you're just a slightly above 500.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, Ben Bishop is middle of the pack when it comes to a goalie this year. Not completely his fault.
No, and I think, we had such high expectations to see his stats really in the middle of goaltenders in the NHL is, I think, disappointing to a lot of people. But I think, like you said, it's not all on him. I think this defense has not been nearly as good as a lot of people expected, but they brought in some new pieces. I'm not sure how long does it take to mold a defense with new pieces. Hitchcock's going to have to start answering some tough questions in the next couple of weeks.
But we've talked about this before in previous episodes. Hockey is different than almost any other sport when it comes to chemistry on the ice. If you bring in a ton of new pieces, it takes a while for that chemistry to build.
Yeah.
They have to have ice time with each other constantly. And I know they're practicing plays and stuff, but sort of like we do in rugby, you've got to throw them out there and maybe do 2 practice out of the week just straight up playing with each other. Sort of like touch, so that you can get an idea of what your other teammates are going to do. You go, oh, I'm going to cut outside on this play. I know exactly what he's going to do, that I don't even have to look to make that pass. I know how fast he is, I know what tendency he has, and I know how he reacts to things. And when you have new players, new system, new everything, it is hard to build that chemistry from the bat. And that's why someone like the Patriots do so well.
Yeah.
They have had the same system for almost 20 years.
And they bring in the same types of players. And having Tom Brady as the quarterback
and those players
really
step
helps.
in, and they don't have to. It's not a massive change when it comes to Tom Brady's options, right? Oh, this guy's new. I'll give him a couple games to really get used to it, and then when I start seeing what he does,
Edelman is the Wes Welker, and Amendola replace. They know exactly what piece they want to replace the piece that they're losing, and they do a great job of doing it.
It's only been a few years since the Stars looked really good, and they were in the playoffs. We were the highest scoring team in the league, or one of the highest scoring teams.
And we were young.
So what happens now is that because we've made such big changes, because we've changed the system, I'm willing to give this team a little bit of time to adjust.
So I think that's the issue that a lot of the Stars fans have is you start off with a team that was in the playoffs 2 years ago, that was the highest scoring team. We thought, wow, we're going to the Stanley Cup. We're going to have a chance of winning the Stanley Cup. They don't do it. The next year, you don't even get to the playoffs, right? So now we're going, whoa,
we see it all the time.
What is going on?
Yep.
Okay, this is still the same team. A lot of great young pieces. Then you bring in a new coach.
And blow it up.
Change the pieces, okay? And we think, well,
change the system.
We still see 3 or 4 of those same pieces in there, so we want to expect what we saw 2 years ago of this young team that can score a lot of goals and has a chance at going to the Stanley Cup. That's what people are expecting. They want to ignore last year. They want to pretend like that didn't happen. We brought in a coach. He's going to make this team better. I think you're right. I think we need to give this time. I think this year is going to be a growth year for the Stars team. Even though you still have players who are left over from that playoff team 2 years ago, this is a growth year. They make the playoffs. They play well enough in the playoffs. That's acceptable.
I think this is
next year would be the year that's a make or break for this team, I think, because those young pieces won't be young anymore next year.
So you see really two extremes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You've got the Cowboys and you've got the Stars, and they both had the same sort of issues going into about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The Cowboys brought in 2 rookies who ended up starting, and they,
unbelievable year. You got a great young team, young offensive line.
Yeah.
Unbelievable year, and now this happens, which is what the Stars were last year, basically, right?
And so what happens is it has 2 different mindsets. The reason why I am and a lot of people are all over the Cowboys is because they had that great year.
Yeah.
But no one puts it to chance or to, the fact that these kids are, dumb luck. These guys, no one knew about them. No one knew their skills. And so they had this unbelievable year. And they had one of the best offensive lines in the league.
And they were fairly healthy.
Yeah, and they were fairly healthy. So when all of a sudden you hear all offseason, they're anointed, they're the best. They're the best in the league. They have a chance of going to the playoffs. They have a chance to go in the Super Bowl. This is the new triplets. And all of a sudden they lay an egg in their second year.
How could it be worse than 13-3? Because we're just adding pieces. We're not losing anybody.
And so what ends up happening is it fosters criticism. Now the Stars, on the other hand, they bring in a new coach. They were horrible last year, and they've improved this year. So what I think, I give teams and players a chance to grow if they struggle at the beginning. Now, if you are the Cowboys and you go 13-3, and then next year you basically are a little bit over 500, that's an issue for me because I don't know what it is there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been injuries, but most of this has been Dak can't throw down the field, and Zeke has been,
looming suspension all season.
With the Stars, it's totally different. It's not personnel issues.
Yeah.
It is chemistry, new system, new goalie. The whole team is brand new. And have you ever driven?
Well, that's maybe a stretch to say the whole team is brand new. But
well, when you bring in a new coach and you have a new goalie and a lot of your major pieces are new, it's basically a new team. And I'll relate this to something. Have you ever gone to a city that you don't know and you rent a car that's fairly new? And it is the scariest thing in the world to be driving down a highway you don't know in a car you don't understand, and you barely touch it, and the whole car varies all over the place, and everything is an overreaction. Everything's an overreaction, right? That's the way I feel about the Stars. Everything's new. They're still feeling out the car. They're still getting a handle of the city they're in, and I think we just got to give it a little bit of time. And that's all that the Stars need. I think they'll get better and better as the year goes on. They might not make the playoffs, but I think we'll see a massive difference, at least on the ice.
I'll just be happy if they're over 500. I think
they're already over 500.
Yeah,
they're already over 500.
We're hovering right now. And as long as we're not hovering, and we do have the best power play in the league, I think that's good, but the defensive issues and the fact that we can't score the way we were scoring 2 years ago, I think that's a huge concern. Is where are the goals going to come from? But let's look at the MLB awards next, and then we have Matt Wixon coming in to talk about Frisco ISD football.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? And now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Now that the Astros have won the World Series and we're looking at the postseason, and before we get to
my mind is still exploding from the fact that a team that was horrible last year won the World Series this year.
Hey, and Sports Illustrated predicted it exactly. In fact, they had Springer on the cover in 2014 saying that the Astros were going to be World Series 2017 champs. They did it, and Springer was the MVP. That's insane. That is insane. Like, I'm a I am the in-studio prophet here, and that is beyond my imagination.
So you're not predicting 2 years down the road?
I am not going to predict that far into the future. That's for the greatest prophets to predict.
One of the things we didn't see coming this year was the Rookie of the Year nominees.
Both of these guys.
We did not see Aaron Judge coming. If you had told me that there was a 6'7" power-hitting outfielder that is going to come in and win the Rookie of the Year, I'd have called you crazy, because that means his strike zone is as big as a normal human being.
Yeah.
And he still doesn't have the problems of like a Joey Gallo, where
he's only hitting 214
and he can't hit certain pitches. This guy in Aaron Judge seems to be able to hit everything. And this is the crazy part.
He hit 284 on the season, and 284 is a good batting average for just a regular, middle infielder. Not a guy with a bunch of power.
He's a combination hitter.
60,
he can hit for the field. He can hit home runs. But I would look at it this way. We have a chance to have, and I hate to say it because I'm not a huge Yankees fan, we have a chance of getting another basically face of baseball in Aaron Judge. Because the face before was a Yankee too.
Yeah, Derek
Jeter. Now, I'm going to say this in the best way possible. We've got a big, strapping young man who's handsome. He's a good-looking kid. So what happens
is... And he seems very down to earth.
Yes,
he's
mature.
great with the media. Yes, very mature for his age.
That's a win-win. That is a win-win.
Derek Jeter incarnate.
But 6'5", 270.
Except that Derek Jeter's not dead yet.
Yeah, well, his baseball's dead.
Baseball dead.
Yeah, he's baseball dead.
Well, he is. He's part of the Miami Marlins. And
what the great part is they don't have to figure out a new nickname, because Derek Jeter was the captain.
Right.
We've got the Judge.
Yeah.
All rise for the Judge. I mean, they already have the whole thing down pat. Just package it.
Yes.
Send it off.
Yeah. Oh man, I just the amount of shirts and hats and everything that they're going to be able to sell.
He alone is going to probably put 10, 15, 20% on the brand next year for the Yankees. The value of the team's going to skyrocket. He's going to put probably $500 million into that franchise.
And it helps that he has a great young team around him, too. And Joe Girardi was way underrated this year. He's not even listed for the Manager of the Year. That's embarrassing that they didn't have him as one of the finalists for Manager of the Year, because of what he did with a great young team, one game away from the World Series.
I don't know either. And you predicted he would go to Washington, which didn't really happen. But Aaron Judge rightfully gets a unanimous vote for Rookie of the Year in the ALS.
In the AL.
Oh, sorry, AL.
Yes, and then Cody Bellinger in the NL, and I think he deserved it, although I don't know that he would have, in my mind, have been unanimous. He was unanimously voted in, but it's the first time that both the AL and NL Rookie of the Year have been unanimously voted in.
So break down the managers.
So managers, AL finalists for Manager of the Year, Terry Francona from the Cleveland Indians. They were the best team in baseball for most of the year. That's what we talked about, is the Indians and the Astros and the Dodgers, really all year, those three teams. The Indians did not have the same pieces that the Astros or the Dodgers had. So I think, he's rightly in that conversation, although they faltered at the end of the season.
I would vote A.J. Hitchin.
A.J. Hinch. I mean, it's a young team. They got a lot of stars. I think the fact that they won the World Series really helps his cause.
Well, no, I think the thing that helps his cause is they were garbage last year.
Yeah.
And they win the World Series this year.
Yeah.
Rags to riches, baby.
But everybody knew this was an up-and-coming Houston team. And I don't know that they were garbage last year. They just weren't great. And this year, they
were so far behind the Rangers, it was crazy.
I think really maybe not as much Hinch, but the general manager.
Okay. Nolan Ryan?
Yeah, should get general manager of the century because of what he's been
Rangers,
bringing in.
In that logic, Rangers should get worst franchise of the year
for getting rid of
Nolan Ryan instead of Josh Daniels.
John Daniels.
Yes,
and
he's not even worth remembering his name.
But they didn't have to get rid of one or the other. I wish they had been able to figure out a way
John
to
Daniels
coexist.
Came into them and said, it's either him or me.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we're taking the legend.
Yeah, and John Daniels has been fine, but Nolan Ryan, he seems to know all the magic spots.
All right, what about now NL?
So NL finalists for Manager of the Year, Bud Black for the Rockies. Look, they were good. They made the playoffs, and they didn't have a whole bunch of talent. But Terry Lovullo, to me, the difference is that the Diamondbacks were a better team. They had about the same amount of talent, but they were a better team. They don't play in Colorado, even though Arizona is a good hitter's park. They don't play in Colorado in Mile High. And you know that the ball just flies out of there. They're able to win games just because they can hit. So, to me, the Diamondbacks should get it here. Dave Roberts, yes, but he won it last year with the Dodgers. And this Dodgers team, look, they're loaded.
Yeah.
They were loaded. They should have won based on that talent alone. So, to me, it should be Lovullo from the Diamondbacks. I think he should get Manager of the Year. AL Cy Young finalist. Look, Corey Kluber was the best pitcher in baseball. And a lot of people want to say, what? Clayton Kershaw is not the best pitcher in baseball? Corey Kluber was amazing for the Indians this year. The only reason he might not get it is because they faltered in the playoffs. But outside of that, he was the best pitcher in baseball. 18-4, 2.25 ERA, and 265 Ks. The Ks and the ERA are both better than Kershaw's this year. Now, Kershaw was out for a little while. But still, Kluber had better stats than Kershaw did. Just that fact should make him the AL Cy Young.
I can't disagree with you because I don't follow those teams very much.
Well, Indians aren't the most fun team in the world to watch.
Yeah, but you know what? I agree with you. Cy Young is not the MVP.
No.
It's not who the most valuable pitcher is. That would be
Clayton Kershaw.
Yes. It is who had the best pitching performance.
When I look at the NL MVP finalists, I don't see Clayton Kershaw, and I feel like I should.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I know, hey, the Cy Young is the MVP for pitchers. But seriously, if a pitcher is so good for his team that he puts him on his back and carries them for months at a time, which Kershaw did this year, you should be in the running for the MVP.
I agree. And Cy Young, for better or for worse, should be MVP for pitchers, but it's not. It's based on stats.
Yeah.
Who had the most wins, who had the lowest ERA, who had the most strikeouts. That is what they base it on, and Kershaw didn't have that.
No, he didn't have that like Kluber had this year. In fact, his strikeouts are the least of all 6 candidates for the Cy Young, 202 Ks. But a 2.31 ERA, he's below 2.5 every year, year after year. And he's going to get put down as one of the best pitchers of all time.
But he is in the NL Cy Young running.
Yes, and I think he does win the NL Cy Young. But it's going to be close because I think Max Scherzer had an amazing year. 16-6, 2.51 ERA, and 268 strikeouts. Those strikeout numbers are pretty insane. They're not Chris Sale insane, but 268 Ks in the NL is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
And then we have to move on to the MVP finalists. And I think this is where the rubber meets the road because, honestly, if you look at the manager,
I'll hold you right there. I'll leave
it.
Just hold on for a second. Before you get into all that, I'm gonna drop who I think needs to be it, regardless of who else is in it. Aaron Judge needs to win it. He revitalized the #1 brand in baseball after they've been careening out of control for years.
Yeah.
That's what, and regardless, it is the most valuable player. Not the best player.
The excitement that he brought back to baseball, I think, is what would be the key to me if they
I'm not saying
decide on him
stats. I'm not saying stats. I'm saying he was arguably the most, he was by far the biggest player and the most valuable player for the Yankees. But for the league, he put butts in seats and butts in front of TV.
I was going to say he was the greatest salesman this year for baseball.
And if you don't have butts in seats, who else is going to see you do all the amazing stuff all these other players do? Aaron Judge, by far in my mind, even though he wasn't the best player in baseball, he was the most valuable player in both leagues in baseball.
That's a great point, because I would have gone with Jose Altuve just because 340 led the league in hitting.
By stats, yes.
Yes, and also they won the World Series, so that usually helps. He was second in wins above replacement. And wins above replacement, I think, is one of the most underrated stats. Aaron Judge, #1. And so I think right there, that's what you could say, is he is the best player compared to the guy who would replace him.
Yes.
And so that would be why you would say he is the MVP for the AL.
And I look at this, and a lot of people believe and baseball is full of purists. They say, well, he didn't blah, 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 have all these stats. But I'll tell you what. Most valuable player doesn't always have to be about stats. It's who was the most valuable person in the league that
If there was
year.
a most valuable person to Major League Baseball,
that could be MVP.
It wouldn't even be
most valuable person. You just have to take player out.
But person. Was him.
Aaron
I
Judge.
think you're right.
And it's not like he sucked.
Close behind him.
He was great.
Close behind him might be Girardi because of what he was able to do with that Yankees team.
Slow your roll. We're not putting managers in this. We're not getting crazy.
Okay.
But it's not. Aaron Judge was a good player.
Yeah.
52 home runs in his rookie season.
Second to only Giancarlo Stanton, who had one of the most outrageous seasons we've seen since.
And he had 112
Sammy Sosa,
RBIs.
Barry Bonds, and Mark McGwire.
114 RBIs.
Yeah.
That's a great year for anybody.
Yeah.
The fact he was doing that in his first year as a rookie, and he on the best team, he revitalized the Yankees, and he revitalized a lot of people watching baseball. Beginning of the year, it didn't matter. As soon as they started getting close to the record, people were watching Aaron Judge.
Oh, yeah.
It really, I don't know about you, it really felt between Gallo, Judge,
and Giancarlo Stanton.
Yes, it felt like the late 90s.
It felt like it, yeah.
It felt like Sosa, Bonds, McGwire.
And
it felt like that.
I think we're going to get it again next year. I think it's even going to be better next year. I think Judge will be better. Stanton will be probably very similar to what he did this year. Probably not with the Marlins.
No.
Maybe with a better team, which actually would be great. And then I think, Joey Gallo is still going to be there. I think he cemented himself as a starter on this Texas Rangers team. They're going to find a spot for him. Maybe it's first base, that he ends up being the starter at first base for this team moving forward. And I think part of this year was him getting used to playing first base. Now that he's cemented at first base, he has an entire offseason to work at it. He's going to be a better hitter next year. Now, he's not going to hit 280, but if he hits 240, 250 and hits 50, 55 home runs, I would not be surprised. So I think you're going to see an even better race next year with these three. NL MVP, I think this is a harder one. I think Stan is just because of the home runs, but
he had 132 RBIs.
His team can't win. And I'm glad for him. He's going to get traded. He's making tons of money. He's going to go to a better team. It's going to be much better for him next year. But this Miami Marlins, I know.
132 RBIs.
I know. Okay, just give it to him for the RBIs.
All right, so coming up after this 1-minute ad break, we will have
Matt Wixon
in, but let's just break it down one last time. Rookie of the Year, Aaron Judge.
Yes.
AL MVP, Aaron Judge. NL MVP, Stanton.
Yeah. It's all about the home runs.
All about the home runs this year. Most home runs ever hit in a Major League Baseball season last year. I am proud to say that this year was interesting.
Around on it.
It was interesting this year, and that's been the problem.
Well, I'm looking forward to next year now.
All right. After this minute break, we'll see you with Matt Wixon.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacy Furniture Anniversary Sale.
Save today on Stacy's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Cheryl, all on sale today.
It's Stacy's Anniversary Sale only happens once a year.
Shop Stacy's today or visit us online at stacyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacy's, you're shopping with family.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacy Furniture.
Football last weekend was a huge weekend. We really found out who's going to end up being in these first round of playoffs. Let's start with Lone Star. I mean, they they continue to win.
Yep.
They won the district the week before.
Right.
And this was just cleanup duty.
It was. And, you know, I mean, they had locked it down. And I went out and watched a little bit of that game. They played Independence. They won 41-13. It was 24-13 in the third quarter. And so it was a good game. And I think I got to give some credit to Independence for, you know, Independence was playing. They had a slim chance in the playoffs. They were playing for that. They were really motivated. They played well. So I'll give them credit. I think Lone Star was caught in that classic. They had just beaten Reedy to win district, and then they've got a playoff game the next week.
Emotional.
You got to have a little dip, and not that they were even consciously doing that way. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And so they weren't super sharp.
It's a good thing though that they have so much talent that they can overcome.
They can overcome a lot
like
of things. Yeah. Still, even though it wasn't one of their best performances, you could see what they can do. Their defense got stops in the second half and just kind of shut down Independence. And the combination of passing and running, it shows what they're going to be able to do in the playoffs, I believe. So that was a good one for them. I guess the big game of the week, last week, at least playoff implications, was Centennial and Heritage.
Yeah.
Winner gets in.
Right.
And it didn't disappoint, 55-48. And it was just a shootout, just like the score indicates. And I got to point out this line for Frisco Centennial's quarterback, Brock Floyd. You can't do much better than this. 17 of 20 for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also rushed 15 times for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. When you need your quarterback to come through for you, I mean, he was
well-rounded game I've heard of. I mean, it's very Cam Newton.
I mean, three incomplete passes, out of 20. So he had a great game, and Centennial obviously needed him.
It's like 100 QBR right there, I think.
Right. So Centennial's in the playoffs with a big win over Heritage. Heritage had a great season too. If you think they lost Amari Jones, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the district.
And
early
still
in the
competed
season,
up
and were right there
level,
to the end. And they were right there in that game. You know, they hung with Centennial. The other games were Reedy beating Frisco Liberty 47-14. Again, Reedy had already clinched.
Yeah,
Liberty
was already
out. Liberty, hey, they got a big win the week before they beat Frisco.
Yes.
They got their district win there. And then another game, good one to highlight, is Frisco Wakeland. Yeah. We had thought at the start of the year that it was going to be Lone Star and Wakeland.
Right.
Those are going to be the 1-2s. And then Wakeland, they lost in Centennial in a crazy overtime game. They had some difficulties early on, although they had a really tough district schedule early.
Yeah.
They came back strong at the end. They're in the playoffs, and I think they could be a dangerous team. They beat Frisco 62-28, and it was the week of the quarterback in Frisco ISD because Dylan Cadwallader for Wakeland, 238 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. So these guys can put the ball up and they can
run the ball down to the 5-yard line, 10-yard line. You just toss it
and then just toss it in. Yeah. So it was a good season. I mean, overall, I think it was a great district season for Frisco ISD. Although Frisco went winless, they were competitive in some games. Liberty, was the same way. I think it showed the parity. But the 4 teams that are going to get in the playoffs, Lone Star, Reedy, Centennial, and Wakeland, I think in the end those were the 4.
And Wakeland and Centennial will be going into Division
1. Division 1.
Sorry, and then Lone Star and Reedy will go Division 2. We'll talk about that more on Thursday.
Okay.
But just looking back at those games, what do you see that's going to help these teams going towards the playoffs?
Well, I think for Centennial, that was the kind of battle they've had a lot of battles, but that was a great battle going into the playoffs that to get them ready. You need to have that feeling where, it was basically a playoff game for them.
Yeah.
They knew in the fourth quarter, we have to make plays now or our season is over. They were ready for that and they came through, and I think that's got to be a nice little confidence boost for them. I think in the case of Reedy and Lone Star, they played teams that weren't quite their caliber, so they were able to rest some people, or certainly not play them as long as they didn't have a competitive game in the fourth quarter.
Right.
So that's good for them. At this point, people are stunned. You play 16 weeks. If you make the championship, you play 16 weeks in Texas. And that's a lot, even on an 18-year-old kid's body. Yeah. They bounce back from seems like everything. But so anytime you can get some rest, that's a really good thing. And then as far as Wakeland goes, when they had that little dip in the middle of the season, they started strong and had a tough time early in the district. Their offense wasn't clicking maybe as well as they wanted. And now, even though it was against Frisco has a pretty good defense. It's kept them in some games. Yeah. Their offense hasn't been able to score so much. To score 62 points in that game for Wakeland, that's got to be a good confidence booster.
Yeah, they've only had a couple of games where they really put up a lot of points anyway. Right. So for them to go ahead and really just demolish Frisco, I mean, putting up 60 points is never.
Against anybody, it's the same size school and everything.
Right.
Same classification.
So I mean, I think that's great for both of those teams going in to see Wakeland really starting to pull it together. I mean, yeah, you talked about it a lot, how challenging their early schedule was in district, and losing that game to Centennial early on.
That overtime game was 69-66, and
really could have changed their season, and they were able to come back and really recover and get back into the playoffs. I think they may be one of the more underrated teams going into the Division I playoffs.
I think some people might overlook them because of their record, but I mean, we thought they had potential before the season started, and I think they've gotten to where they want to be going into the playoffs, and I think they have a real good chance. I mean, Division I is a difficult draw. There's no doubt about it, but at least they're feeling good about themselves as they're going into the playoffs.
Yeah. Okay. And that does it for Off the Bench today. Next time, Matt, we'll talk about the playoffs for these FISD teams. It's that time of year, and we got Thanksgiving coming up next weekend, and it's starting to get cold.
Everything's coming together.
So, Matt Wixon, thanks for coming in, and we'll see you on Thursday.